Hello, all. Welcome to today's session. So, let's start without any kind of a delay. So, in the previous session, we have learned about the one very important thing which is known as constructor functions, and we have already learned about an important thing known as optional chaining. So, in today's session, let's learn about symbols and let's try to understand how does an object will be converted into primitives when in a certain cases altogether. So, for that, let me create a file and let me say it is as symbol symbol.js. Let's write our respective code inside this thing. Wait a minute. So, symbol is the seventh primitive data type. We haven't learned about these symbols because if you want to understand this one simple, sorry, if you want to clearly understand about this one simple primitive data type, we need to have some kind of a knowledge on objects. So that's why I have covered the respective primitive data types and I have covered objects. Then I am coming back to this seventh primitive data type, which is actually known as symbol. So what is this respective thing known as a symbol? So in that respective scenario, so let's say we have a um yeah, let's say we have this thing. Yep. Let's come back to the session again. So now coming back to this one fundamental point where till now we have the primitive data types as number, where we have big int, where we have big int, number, string, boolean, one, two, three, null, undefined. These six primitive data types that we have already learned in our previous sessions. So now we have our new thing, a new primitive type which is known as symbols. So we need to understand what are these symbols and why they are actually utilized or created as a primitive data type in JavaScript environment altogether. By specification, by specification, only two primitive, only only two primitive types may serve as object property keys. So we need to understand what exactly is this given particular thing. For example, I can say one is string type, the other one is symbol type. What does this entire thing means? For example, let's say I have created a user. Let user is equals to name. Let it be something like Nathan. Now, in this respective context, sorry, it's not this, it's a comma. Now, in this respective concept, whatever the property here, the entire property is key value pair. Here, the key value is exactly meant by name and value that is being attached to the key is Nathan. So, as we have seen, only two primitive types may serve as object property keys. So if you want to have this for a given particular object, the key can either be string type or can be symbol type. For example, if I want to access this property, I'll simply say user.name. I'll simply say user.name. But if I use a square bracket notation, we need to keep anything like this. If I use square bracket notation to access this given particular property, I need to mention the key in string format altogether. And we have already seen that whenever we have something like this, where the property, in a property, the key is a number, this will eventually be considered as a string. This will eventually be treated as string. So all the keys in a respective properties of an object will always be considered as one single important thing, which is known as string type. But to create a property inside an object, we can also have our keys to follow symbol data type altogether. Symbol data type altogether. For example, here, sorry, if I reverse them. So whatever things that we are seeing on the left hand side, which is the keys, which are the keys, they are represented in the string format. They are represented in the string format. So the other way where we can represent the keys in a given particular property, sorry, should can also be in the format of symbols. Can also be in the format of symbols. Now coming back to this one very important thing, what is meant by symbol? Let me remove all of it. What is meant by symbol? Uh, yeah. So I can say this one very important thing, which is represented to the symbol thing as a symbol represents a unique. A symbol represents a unique identifier. Symbol represents a unique identifier altogether. So I can say a value of this type, of this symbol type, to be more precise, of this symbol data type can be created using symbol of. For example, if I want to create any symbol, I'll simply say ID is of symbol of symbol of. Now, another important thing is I want to say upon creation. Oh, wait, sorry. Upon creation, we can give symbols a description, which is also known as symbol name. Symbol name. Description. This description actually known as symbol name, where mostly useful for debugging purposes. So in this given particular context, in this respective context, here we have created a symbol creation. Symbol creation actually happened, but description isn't mentioned. Description isn't mentioned. Description isn't mentioned. So what we can do after doing this given particular thing is, let's mention description. I'll say let ID is equal to, sorry, symbol of, I'll mention description as ID. So here what I'm doing is ID is a symbol with description, the CRI, description of ID. This is what I have did here. This is what I have did here. Now one very important thing we need to actually remember is symbols are guaranteed to be unique, which is nothing but, even let's say if we create many symbols with exactly same description, if I create many descriptions with exactly the same description, they are different values. For example, if I say, um, let me create it. Let ID1 is equal to symbol of ID. Let's say the description here is it is let's ID2 equal to the symbol of ID. Now, when you compare ID1 and ID2, let's try to do the comparison because they are primitive types. So comparison actually works. ID1 double equals to ID2. So here we are doing this equality check. Let's run the code and see what is the output. So we'll say symbols.js. Now you can clearly see this is false. This is the output is false. Even though if you can clearly observe, this descriptors for both the symbols that we have created is actually same, but still, these two symbols are actually different. These two symbols are actually different. That's one very important thing we need to clearly understand. Um, Another important thing is, or let me do one thing. So I can say a symbol. Wait a minute. A symbol is a primitive unique value. Primitive unique value with an optional description. Even in the above here, we haven't mentioned any kind of a description, but still, you can create such kind of a symbols. These are unique values. On a simpler level, you can say if you want to create a unique value in using primitive data type, we can use this symbol data type altogether. Right. Now, let's try to understand what exactly that we can do with symbols and we cannot do with the symbols. One such kind of a thing is symbols don't auto convert. They don't auto convert to a string. So most values in JavaScript support implicit conversions to a string. So for instance, when we use something like alert thing, alert, alert, this returns a string output. This returns a string output. Of giving any value for an alert, it returns a string output altogether. Even if you provide a number as an input, it will give string. But symbols are special. They don't auto convert. Let me write it. Symbols are special. They don't auto convert. So, for example, let me take this one thing. Let me open a browser. Let me open this inspect. Let's go to the console tab and let's try this example. Let's try to create it. Let ID is equal to something like symbol of with a description ID. With a description ID. Now, another important thing I just want to say, if I say alert of this ID, alert of this ID, if you run, you can clearly see fail to execute alert because it is clearly mentioning cannot convert a symbol to a string. For example, if I have let username is equal to something like Nitin, or let's take age. Age is equal to 1, 2, 3, sorry, 12, for example. Oh, sorry. Let age is equal to 12. And if I say alert, if I say age, if I enter it, let's close this thing. Now, can you see this number? Let's store it here. Let return TURNED returned value is equal to this. Now console.log, we have returned value. Let's observe it. Enter. So here age, in age variable, we are actually storing this one very number. But when I am passing that same number to alert function, whatever thing that we are actually seeing here is automatically converted from number to string by the alert function. If I click on OK, now I can clearly see it is not being returned anything. It is not being returned anything. That's completely fine. So, as one very important thing we need to understand is when we created a symbol, and if you use that symbol for an alert function, because alert function has this implicit conversion, whatever data that you pass into alert function, like this in between these brackets, that will be converted into string format. That's how alert function actually works. This is what meant by implicit conversion to string. But symbols doesn't auto convert. Symbols cannot be converted because we cannot convert a string or a symbol value to a string. That's why we get an error in this given particular context. Let me close it off. Let me close it off. So, why does this given particular error happens where it clearly mentions us we cannot convert a symbol to or symbol value to a number? Because that's a language guard against messing up. Because strings is a primitive data type, symbols is another primitive data type, but fundamentally both are different. Fundamentally both are different because symbols are used to create unique values to be to be more precise, but it's not the case with the strings. It's not the case with the strings. So if you want someone to be very unique, then we should not accidentally convert a symbol to string. Symbol to string conversion should be stopped. That's why we have this given particular thing of statement symbol don't auto convert to the string, because symbols are needed to convert into respective are needed to be unique. That's why the conversion doesn't happen. The implicit conversion doesn't happen. And the other thing I want to mention is if we really want, wait a minute, if you really want to show a symbol, we need to explicitly call dot to string function on it. For example, let's say we have this ID. Let's comment it. Let's paste it. Let's try to use it for this. If I say console.log, if I ever want to convert this thing to into string format, the symbol to string format, I'll be saying id dot to string, id dot to string. Now let me run the code and I'll see this entire thing. this right hand side, this entire symbol thing with a description is actually being converted into string format, is actually being converted into a string format. Or instead of using this thing, we can actually go ahead and do it. I think this might be a bit advanced, but let me teach you. I'll simply say console dot id dot description, id dot description. So oh, sorry. This the id, this thing is actually now being converted into the thing. So here, so not this, the left hand side, the description part, whatever description that present here, that is being converted here. So we can get this description because description is present in the format of string. We can get this given particular description which is present in the format thing using a respective thing. Let me write it. We can access the description which is in string without converting the without converting the symbol to string by using symbol dot description syntax, where we can access the description using this thing. So here id is where I'm storing the symbol, id is where I'm storing primitive data known as symbol. Now if I want to access its description, I'll simply say the symbol and I'll mention dot and I'll mention this given particular thing known as a description altogether. This is how I can actually do it. So right, now coming back to this another example, let's say it has a hidden properties, hidden properties. So what is meant by this respective thing known as hidden properties? Symbols allows us to create hidden properties of an object like that no other part of the code can accidentally access or overwrite. For instance, let's say if we are working with user objects, for example, that belongs to some other sorry, third party code, then we will like to add identifiers to them. For example, we have a third party code which is from a different person or different software, different application. If you want to work upon that thing, if you want to make modifications, instead of directly modifying that third party code in your code, what you can do is we can create an identifiers like this and we can use it. For example, mm, I'll say let user is equal to something like name Nathan, and I'll simply mention let id is equal to symbol of id. I think there is already id here. Okay. So I've created this user, for example, it should be present in separate code, but for your and ease of understanding, I have kept this new object user in the same space in the same space of the code. Now I have created a symbol and we have this respective thing known as a user. Now what I can do is I can say user of id should be of one, should be of one. Now if we say console.log of user, let's see what will be the output. So here what we are exactly doing, we are okay attaching the IDs or the symbols to the object to the object. And one very important thing, when we are attaching symbols from our code to a third party object, to a third party, what is meant by third party? It is nothing but this object is being created by some other developer, not by your not by your team or you. So when you are working with such kind of a things, when you are attaching these identifiers to the respective objects which is present in a third party code, then it is nothing but the owner of this actual object. Who is the third party owner of this owner of the code of this third party application or third party software altogether? Then that entire thing, what I was saying, that we have seen, that entire thing is now being changed or is now being kept safe. Not changed, is kept safe, which is nothing but how many identifiers you add to the respective third party object or different object altogether. Then in that object, this will be added from our perspective, not from the owner's perspective. Owner will still see only one single property as a name Nitin. But when we add this respective identifier or symbol for this respective third party object, then who is the person who is attaching these symbols to the object can only view how many symbols are being attached to this respective object altogether. So if I say node, sorry, run the code, I can clearly see we have two properties, name Nitin, and we have the symbol ID where it is storing the value of 1. Where it is storing the value of 1. Even if I want to access, this value 1, I'll be simply doing this one thing. I'll say, sorry, not here. I'll say ID. ID. You can see this is accessed with the value of 1. This is how this hidden properties will be gained. So whenever you are adding symbols to an object, to a third party code, I repeat, to a third party code, then at that given point of time, whatever symbols that you added will be hidden. That will be hidden for the owner. That will be hidden for this respect to owner, right? Now, one very important thing we need to understand. I can say, how can I tell this thing? Right. Let me keep it like this. Or shall we? Or let me write a comment. So let me do this one single comment. Based upon that, I have one very important thing need to be shared. First, let me write this comment. So I'll be saying we can access the data using symbol as key. As I have already told initially, that this two primitive types may serve as object property keys, which is nothing but here. This is a string, and we are adding a new property, a new entire property where the key value is symbol, where this key value is a symbol, where this key value is a symbol to the respect to object, to the respect to object. So this is how we need to do. That's how we are actually being implementing this respective symbols thing altogether. Give me a minute. Yeah. Coming back to this given particular thing. Sorry. Yeah. So let's get back to our respective session. Now coming back to this one very important thing, you can clearly observe this thing. Let me draw it out. Now one fundamental question that I would like to answer is, what's the benefit of using symbol ID over a string 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 ID for respect to objects property. So as we have clearly seen here, we have a user object which is actually belong to another another code base altogether. It is unsafe to add fields to this object which is from another code base, since we have while writing, or the other developer might be focusing on writing a different code with a different intention altogether. If you curb their intention, if you try to add your own included things into this other third party objects, then that destroys the harmony of this other application or other code base. However, one very important thing is symbols cannot be accessed accidentally. The third party code won't be aware of newly defined symbols. Here in this given particular example, we have clearly seen that we have added a new symbol to this respect to third party object. When I mean third party object, it represents that the object is from different code base altogether. That's what I meant by third party object altogether. Now coming back to this given particular thing, same thing here. This user object doesn't have this context whether it has a symbol like this or not, but from my side I have added, because this entire thing that what we are saying is from our side. It will be converted from our side. It's for our own purposes. It is for our own purposes. So even we can do this one thing. Instead of doing this thing, I can say let user1 is equal to name to be something like Nathan, and we can also add a symbol like this. We can add a symbol like this. This is how we add a symbol. So here it is not, this is not like this. This is not like this, but this is a proper symbol. When you want to add a symbol into a object literal as a property, this is what we actually do. And another important thing I want to mention is symbols are skipped in for in loop. Symbols are skipped in for in loop altogether. So this is one very important thing we need to keep in mind. We need to keep in mind. This is super important. This is super important. So this is about the respective thing known as symbols. So if you have interest to read about some other things, we have things something like global symbols. We have something like system symbols. These are very two advanced stuff when we are dealing with this thing known as a symbol. But till this point, whatever we have learned, that would be sufficient. Now coming back to this another thing, we see it. Yes, coming back to this one thing which is known as object to primitive, object to primitive conversion. So what happens, let's say if I have an object 1, obj1, and if I add something like obj2, we have two different objects. When we add this, what will be the output? Or if we have this thing known as obj1 minus obj2, if this is the case, what exactly is the case? Or if someone says alert of a given particular object, because this alert function inherently changes whatever things that are passed into it into a string format. So if you want do this happen, how does objects will be converted to primitives? Because object is not a primitive data type, it is a non-primitive data type. So one very important thing we need to understand is JavaScript doesn't allow to, or doesn't allows us to customize how operators work on object. Unlike some other programming language like C++, we cannot implement special object method to handle some addition or some other operations altogether. In such cases, objects are auto converted into primitives, which is nothing but in these cases here, objects are converted to primitives. Objects are converted to primitives, and then operation will be done. Operation is carried out, and results, it's a very important thing, results in a primitive value, results in a primitive value altogether. So that's an important limitation. I think you need to mention this limitation. I think this is important limitation, which is nothing but the result of, let's say, this obj1 plus obj2, this result can't be another object. Can't be another object. Example, the thing that I want to mention is when we try to add up two objects, the result will not be object, because object 1 and object 2, obj1 and obj2 will both be converted into primitives. And after conversion of primitives are actually happen, then addition happens. Then the result will also be primitive. So we can't make objects representing matrices or some other thing, add them, expect them to summed up as an object as a result. That's not uh, possible, because we can't technically do much here. There is no math with objects in real projects. Let's say when you are creating or storing a user's details, you don't want to merge two user details. Merging two user details is different, but you don't add user details of Shaker and you don't add user details of Funny. You don't merge, don't add of them. Just mathematical addition, not merging, mathematical addition. It doesn't have any kind of a sense. So that's why here we have, or this JavaScript creators have taken this given particular thing where converting objects into primitives and results will also be in primitives after the operation. Now, when in real world cases, when you want to add this given particular thing like object 1 plus object 2 in that given particular case, in some rare exceptions, because it's because of coding mistakes, it will happen. So what are those such kind of things? So we'll understand the purposes. Like we have two purposes. Purposes. So what are those two purposes? Like let two purposes on how an object converts to primitive and how to customize it. So in order to do this given particular thing understanding, we have two purposes why we want to convert an object to primitive. It will allow, let me keep it, it will allow us to understand, it will allow us to understand what's going on in case of coding mistakes. Coding mistakes. When such an operation happened. Second thing is, there are exceptions where such operations possible and look good, like subtracting or comparing dates or some kind of an object will come across the data. There are exceptions in few cases and they look good. They look good. They look good. Where when compare two different date objects, subtracting or comparing two different date objects, we'll come to that given particular date objects in few other sessions. Once you do that kind of a thing, we have a unique, or if I have a nice way of dealing with conversions and converting back to the objects. So we have seen in one of the sessions that we have understood about how do we convert from one primitive data type to another primitive data type. I think that would be on the video of type conversions. So in that given particular video of, or in the session of this type conversions, we have seen the rules for numeric conversion, string conversion, and boolean conversions of primitives. Like how can we convert a string to boolean, a string to number, number to string, number to boolean. We have seen all of these things, but we left a gap for objects. Now, as of now, we know about why methods are present, what is properties in an object, and what is, or what are, why symbols are actually being used. It is easy for us now to understand what are the conversion rules that helps us this object to primitive conversion. So one very important thing we need to understand is uh, conversion rules. Conversion rules. First conversion rule is there is no conversion of object, of any object to boolean, because all objects are true in boolean context. It is as simple as that. So there exist only numeric and string conversions. This is the first thing. Second thing is the numeric conversion happens when we subtract objects or apply mathematical functions. Like if I say uh, numeric conversion happens only when we have, only when we have what is this one thing, uh, numeric conversion happens when we subtract, or when we subtract objects or apply some math functions, some math functions. For string conversion, for string conversion, it usually happens. Write it. It usually happens when we output an object with something like this, a let of object, and in similar context, we can implement string conversions and numeric conversions by ourselves using some special object methods. We'll come to that given particular thing when we have this topic, when we are dealing with this respect to topic thing at a given particular point of time. That would be thing. So if you want to, like, let me say, if you want to have the string conversion, you can do simply like this. Use this alert of object. It will works ALERT. And we have this one very important thing. I think that would be the thing. That would be the thing. That would be the thing. Let's try to understand how can we convert into numeric conversions. I'll say let num is equal to, I can simply say number of obj. This is numeric conversions. This is explicit conversions, to be more precise. Explicit conversion. If you are using any kind of a math functions, if you want to convert an object into new number using math functions, you will be doing like this. Let num is equal to, sorry, not let num, let n is equal to, using unary plus, we can do it. Obj. This is actually possible. Not object, obj. This is exactly possible. I will say let delta is equal to date 1 minus date 2. This is how we can actually do it. And for comparisons also we can do it. For math we can do the comparison. I'll say let greater is equal to user 1 greater than user 2. Not this, right? We can do this comparisons like this. We can do this comparison like this. Um, but one very important thing we need to understand here would be, um, most built-in math functions also include such conversion. Like a basic thing here, conversion of you objects will actually happen. Now, another important thing that we need to understand is, um, if you have, because we have already seen how can we actually convert a symbol to primitive, symbol to string format altogether, which similarly we can also use the same kind of a demo here. The same kind of a demo can be also used in this respective sessions altogether. So for many operators and functions, we can perform type conversions. For example, multiplication converts operands to numbers. Like if you pass an argument or if you pass an object as an argument, then we have two stages of calculation. First, the object needs to be converted into primitive. The second thing is we need for we need that continue this calculation, as in the result will also be in the primitive. We need to further calculations. The resulting will be primitive is also converted. That's why we have this standard format of converging the things, converging the objects to strings, right? So now coming to this basic point example, let me tell you. Let me take this one single example, or um, mm, I think actually this is a one edge case. Yes, I forgot to mention this is one edge case. This is one edge case. So this occurs in rare cases when the operator is not sure what type what type to expect. For instance, there is a binary plus. For instance, there is a binary plus where this binary plus can work both for string concatenation for strings and for numbers and for numbers. So if a binary plus gets an object as an argument, let me write it. If a binary plus gets an object as an argument, it uses the default hint. This is interesting thing. Default hint to convert it. Also, if an object is compared using, let me write it here. Also, if an object is compared using double equal to with a string or a number or something like symbol, for example, it's also unclear. It's also unclear which conversion should be done. So that's why we have this option known as a default hint is visible, is actually being used. So for greater than and less than comparators, where both can work for strings and numbers, still they can use some kind of a number. For example, let me do this one simple example. I'll say let total is equal to obj1 plus obj2. Now if you can go hover this given particular thing known as an this binary plus, this is any, but here this binary plus, when you try to perform such kind of an options, then uses a default hint. Default hint. This is a very rare case. Rare case. But in practice, it is much more simpler. Um, Still, when you use comparison operators, where they can work both on numbers and strings too, still they use the number hint, not default. This is for a historical reason, which is not that required for us, because we need to go to the history of the decisions that are made in the JavaScript format altogether. So that's it for this respective session. We'll meet in next session. We'll try to understand what are the things that we're going to furthermore learn. And thank you all and happy learning and bye.